Guys, welcome to Real Classic Film Reviews and welcome to a classic war movie review of The Seawolves, released in 1980 and starring Gregory Peck, David Niven and Roger Moore. Now, this is the tale of British intelligence bringing together a crew of ex-soldiers who come out of retirement to pull off a daring and unlikely undercover mission in Goa. Now, this Jolly Boys outing of a movie was based on the 1978 book Boarding Party, which in turn was based on the true story of Operation Creek during the Second World War. Now, this sees some outrageous acting talent attempt to blow up some German ships who've been broadcasting Allied ship movements to German U-boats from a neutral port, the Naughty Boys. Anyway, I hadn't seen this movie in years and I've been going through a bit of a men on a mission kick lately, so let's take a look.
What if a group of British civilians managed to board there themselves? If they were caught, might be taken as a drunken escapade.
Oh, God.
Little chancy with the Portuguese government.
That's a masterpiece of understatement. London would have our heads.
So let's address this straight away. The Seawolves is never going to stand out for its groundbreaking cinematic techniques or its intense battlefield sequences. And yeah, it may raise an eyebrow for it being talked about on a classic film channel, but this movie does score points for its sheer charm and for being an understated tribute to heroism from the most unlikely of sources, aging retired soldiers looking for one last shot at battlefield glory. Now, this covert mission features the Calcutta Light Horse, which was part of the cavalry reserve in the British Indian Army. And at the heart of this film is the real-life 1943 mission to destroy a German ship in a neutral port. And due to political complications, the British couldn't launch an official military assault, so they turned to a secretive and unconventional solution, enlist the help of the Calcutta Light Horse, a group of long-retired British Army officers who are now living quiet civilian lives in colonial India, and who better to cast as these guys than some old-school legends of the movie business. And so we have Gregory Peck as Colonel Lewis Pugh, a fictional version of one of the masterminds behind the mission. Now, if you need a bit of old-school gravitas, then Peck probably is your guy. He goes on to recruit David Niven's Colonel Grice and his motley crew, featuring acting talent in the shape of Kenneth Griffith and Patrick Macnee.
Lewis, if you should ever hear of a job that's so odd that nobody else would want to get involved in it, do think of the Calcutta Light Horse.
It's not very likely.
No, I know.
And the group is also joined by Roger Moore as Captain Gavin Stewart, a dashing and resourceful intelligence officer who brings charisma and lightness to proceedings. And what I mean by that is that you hire the guy who was between 007 outings, Moonraker and The Spy Who Loved Me, to essentially play James Bond here for the audience that are too young to know who David Niven is. And of course, Moore gets a romantic subplot here, featuring Barbara Kellerman as a mysterious woman with divided loyalties. And it does feel like it's shoehorned in to give Moore his ladies' man moments. And speaking of 007, I think what sets The Seawolves apart from many other war films is its blend of espionage thriller, action adventure and character drama. It's less about gritty trench warfare or large-scale battles. It instead turns its focus to the art of sabotage and spycraft. And we get coded messages, clandestine meetings and double agents all wrapped up in a story that's paced more towards the leisurely, shall we say, which is, to be fair, reflective of the nature and age of its protagonists. Yet that's not to say there's no action here, because there are a few explosions and firefights, of course, but the real suspense of the whole thing comes more from the risk of the mission itself than the fact that the men of the Calcutta Light Horse are not professional soldiers anymore. They're in the 50s and 60s, physically out of shape and removed from modern warfare.
Mr. Melbourne, are you all right?
No, I'm just having a private heart attack. Get out, Miss Wentworth.
Now, this was made by director Andrew V. McLaglen, who brings his experience from westerns and adventure films to bear here. McLaglen had just made The Wild Geese, which has a very similar plot to this regarding over-the-hill soldiers going on one final glory-filled mission. And he'd also made North Sea Hijack, The Devil's Brigade, The Dirty Dozen, The Next Mission, and Return to the River Kwai. So he was clearly the go-to guy for lower-tiered, mature men-on-a-mission movies. Now, there's no escaping the fact that much of the runtime, certainly in the film's first two acts, is spent setting up the political context and introducing our characters. And it's 45 years old now, so it does lack a bit of urgency. And the action sequences here, when they do arrive, are well executed. But again, if you're looking for that visceral impact of more modern movies, you'll realise that this is not the Expendables franchise. Now, replacing that, I think, is this sense of romanticism that runs through the film. The British characters are mostly portrayed with honour and charm and a good stiff upper lip. And there's certainly this kind of colonial nostalgia, nothing new for British war films, of course, that sits all the locals on the sidelines whilst the Brits and the Germans go head to head. Still, The Seawolves is quite charming and in many ways respectful tribute to an extraordinary wartime operation that had long been shrouded in secrecy. The boarding party operation raid on Goa remained a British government secret for 35 years, from 1943 to 1978. And even though the mission was declassified decades later, the filmmakers have still taken some dramatic liberties, of course, to raise the stakes a little bit for the silver screen. Now, I do have a personal soft spot for these old school men on a mission movies, anything that has a ragtag group of old-timers coming out of retirement for one last job, especially if it's all wrapped up in British acting talent. Throw in a Bond girl, female antagonist, some far-off exotic locations and some disposable villains for the good guys to mow down, and you have some good old-fashioned Sunday afternoon movie goodness. And yes, you do feel like one of these guys may get a hernia at any moment, and that's kind of the fun of it. And it's not like anyone involved is pretending that they're 30 years younger. In fact, the best thing about The Seawolves is the larky performances from most of the cast, and also listening to Gregory Peck's British accent, bravely undertaken in front of actors like Roger Moore and David Niven, so no small task.
You don't suppose that it could be on one of the 3 German freighters interned there?
But the Portuguese authorities dismantled those ships' radios when they gave them permission to stay there.
Yes, but how do we know that one of them doesn't have another transmitter hidden somewhere aboard?
We don't.
Now, the direction here gets the job done, but there's little doubt that this probably looked wildly out of date when it was released in 1980. If you think this arrived in the same year cinema goers were watching The Empire Strikes Back and only a year before Raiders of the Lost Ark, then this feels like it's wandered in from the late 60s or early 70s. And that's not to sound overly critical. Films like these are the movie dictionary definition of they don't make them like this anymore. Walloping those jerrys between seductions and whiskey guzzling, wartime manoeuvres mixed with cricket and polo matches, and the noble and also British notion of choosing to risk certain death rather than booze-soaked boredom. Go check it out.
Lewis, you're talking about a mixed bag of boozing, middle-aged, pot-bellied businessmen.
They'd give their right arms to help.
It's insane, Lewis, and you know it.